here's a story with a reporter that we really don't like. This Taylor Lorenz, first of all, this Luigi kid, 26 years old, comes from a wealthy family, kind of had everything handed to him, was the valedictorian of a prep school, went on to Ivy League school, University of Pennsylvania, where we know there's all kinds of woke radicalization. Just look at what they were doing on campus with their chants, anti-Israel, anti-American, etc. Here he is, kind of a dust up there as authorities were arresting him for the murder. He allegedly murdered the CEO of United Healthcare in cold blood. Just awful stuff. Take a look.
Down.
Oh my God! That's completely out of touch, and an insult to the intelligence of the American people and the lived experience.
Okay, so he was talking about how this is somehow an insult to the intelligence of the American people. Luigi Mangione is his name. He had, or was getting a master's in computer science, or master's in engineering, I should say, from the University of Pennsylvania. Now, what's really interesting is if you look at his Twitter account, he's followed by one Taylor Lorenz, and the Twitter sphere is like all tweeting or Xing, I should say, about this right now, because the question is, why was she following him? Is there any kind of bizarre connection? Did she come in after the fact? Did authorities tip her off? Or was she somehow in any way, shape, or form, dare we say, connected in some bizarre fashion? Because I guess he was very, very anti-healthcare, and as was she. So she's kind of well known because she blew up at Washington Post after she doxed a whole bunch of people, including the End Wokeness account on Twitter. So she was really into doxing and calling people out. She did so, by the way, with some of the CEOs of other healthcare companies. And then when this guy was shot and killed, she had no remorse about it. She was actually sort of gleeful and sort of said she completely understood it. These were some really heinous comments that she made. There was sort of no empathy, if you would, in some of her responses. And so she has been written about since then, and Vox Media, who had been employing her, allegedly has now fired her over this. So Vox Media, which like you can't get more liberal than Vox, okay, Vox is super duper like on the left. They're like, okay, enough is enough. Washington Post had already said enough is enough. But sometimes when you think about like, is the media really the enemy of the people, this leftist media, you wonder, right? Like how much of a role does a reporter like that, who really, hates capitalism, hates individuals like this, and somehow feels like she can justify this kind of hate, how much of a role does she have in corrupting a young person or any person? So 26 years old, University of Pennsylvania. I also think like some of these universities are kind of at fault because they're so woke and they're so rabid and they're encouraging, frankly, this disconnect and this hate, and somehow you're authorized or okay to cancel out the other side by any means possible. This is very Antifa-like if you think about it.
I'm speaking to the sentiment. People do want these executives dead. If you have
But you
watched,
said we want them dead, and I guess that's...
I mean, look, I'm gonna say I'm with the people in the sense that if you have watched a loved one die because insurance has denied them life-saving essential health care, it is natural to wish that the people who run those systems would suffer the same fate as your loved one. And millions of people across America have had this experience. So yes, am I, when I say, do I wish someone dead, is that advocating for them to be killed? No, of course not. But am I going to shed tears or have a lot of empathy for somebody that has facilitated the deaths of thousands of innocent Americans through intentionally denying them coverage? I am not going to, weep over it. I do think that loss of life is a tragedy. I'm very against death generally, as a principle. But I think, again, why do we mourn certain deaths and condone other deaths of innocent, vulnerable people?
So you can see how that's kind of effectively condoning. what he did. She's all trapped up in her logic, by the way. She just, Piers Morgan totally shredded her because the woman, frankly, is just dumb, okay? She's like, on the one hand, oh, I think it's fine. And then on the other hand is like, but oh no, I think I'm against death of any kind. I mean, she literally makes no sense. And so again, she was former Washington Post. Think about that. By the way, I'll issue a correction myself. On yesterday's program, I kept calling her a Washington Post reporter. I had forgotten that the Washington Post already fired her. So Jeff Bezos, he doesn't want anything to do with this woman. She did already get fired. And now Vox coming out saying, we have fired her too. Now she disputes this. She's like, no, I haven't really been fired. That's not true. That's the mainstream media lying. And they're saying, okay, we're parting ways. Apparently they were going to part ways anyway at the end of the year, and we're not renewing her contract. Here she is. I want to show you because Piers is great. Like, he's like, lady, you just don't make any sense. Okay. So again, this lady was working for the Washington Post and then went over to Vox, uber liberal. This is who is representing the media. It's scary in and of itself.
Thanks. Let's move to the other story because Taylor's been waiting patiently here. So this issue of Brian Thompson, one of the top healthcare executives in the country, I'm just curious why your first reaction would be to his cold-blooded execution. And people wonder why we want these executives dead. And then you later commented when people were giving you a lot of blowback, I'm not alone, you said. Healthcare executive down with party balloons was on a next post that you commented on. Why would you be in such a celebratory mood about the execution of another human being? Aren't you supposed to be on the caring, sharing left where, you believe in the sanctity of life?
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean,
joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that he murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
But why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the system.
You seem to find the whole thing hilarious.
I find your question funny.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
Good for him.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year and because they are denied life-saving health care from people like this CEO. Now, I want to fix the system. You're right. We shouldn't be going around shooting.
Wait. She just said she found it joyful. She felt joy when this guy was murdered. Do you understand how scary this is? This is what the mainstream media thinks is okay. This woman worked for the Washington Post. When you see Joy Reid on MSNBC and the rest of them carrying on, they think that the means justify the end, however they need to get there, they're okay with that. She felt joy when he was murdered because somehow that was going to fix the overall healthcare problem. No. We are the United States of America. And you know how we fix things? We go to the ballot box. We actually vote. And we just did. You know what? We don't like Joe Biden and his idiot policies. We don't like his inflation. We don't like his border. And guess what? We just voted his, really so far out of that. He's even going down in history as the worst president, worse than Nixon, worse than anyone, okay? He was a bad president with bad policies. So we did something about it. We don't all just take up arms and assassinate people, you crazy liberal reporter who feels joy when you hear somebody, a father, dies.
With vigilante justice. No. I think that it is a good thing that this murder has led to America, or really the media elites and politicians in this country paying attention to this issue for the first time. You mentioned you couldn't understand why somebody would feel this reaction when they watched a CEO die. It's because you have not dealt it sounds like, with the American healthcare system in the way that millions of other Americans have.
I've dealt with the healthcare system in various ways in America. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but the idea that I would view it as something...
Have you been denied life-saving treatment?
The idea that I would view it as something joyful, that a man has been, who's just a healthcare executive, has been executed in the street, I find completely bizarre. Let me bring in Tommy here. Yeah. Tommy, I keep being told...
Hang on,
Taylor, I'll come back to you.
Okay, don't say I'm joyful. I said
you said you were feeling joyful.
She did.
Yeah, I take that back. Joyful is the wrong word, Piers.
You think?
I said, as I clarified,
you think?
Yeah.
You think joyful is the wrong word? Yeah,
sure,
I'd say it is.
Vindicated, celebratory, because again, it feels like justice in this system when somebody responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of Americans suffers the same fate as those tens of thousands of Americans who he murdered or
Tommy, whether Taylor wants to retract the word joyful or not, we all heard her say it, and I was just shocked. I mean, I find that kind of response utterly shocking, that someone can be murdered in the middle of Manhattan, who happens to be an executive for a healthcare company. And
you know what? And Tommy's a good scout. She and I used to work together. I like her very much over on Fox, and she's a realist, and she goes on to call Taylor out. I mean, this is gross behavior. And by the way, not only did she say she felt joy, she then went on to say, when she said, well, maybe I'm mistaken with that word because this is not a very bright woman. None of the media members are really all that bright. It's like they take the dumbest possible people, the people that can't get jobs in real America, and they throw them into media and then become parrots for deep state, etc. And this one, I don't even know. She's just a wackadoo, okay? Like a complete whack job. And so she said first she felt joy, and then she's like, well, it's justice. No. That's not how we do justice, okay? That's like Antifa, okay? So what, she's joining Antifa? Is that what it is? She's like, I'm not fired. It's 100% false to say I'm fired. That's not true. In other words, she's refuting this story. I'll tell you, maybe they're just quote unquote parting ways. I've seen that before. It means you're fired, hon, okay? You're fired. Maybe they'll pay out the rest of your contract through the end of December if that is the deal they had with you. But Taylor Lorenz is just dumb, okay? She's a dumb and irresponsible quote unquote journalist. I mean, that word, journalist, now, it's like a trigger word for me. Like, it's disgusting. These journalists are like a bunch of hit people. And in her case, where she's out literally on her Twitter account publishing the names of all of these CEOs as though to say, hey, go get them, go get them, go get them. I mean, what a nut job. What a nut job. And so I ask you this, how is it that she was one of the very first to be following this Luigi Mangione, as we would say in Italian, Mangione, I don't know how they said it. But anyway, he came from a very wealthy family. Kid was the valedictorian.
Any of us will forget. How about this winter, when Kevin Wang delivered his senior speech? As Kevin moved to America and joined our class in 9th grade, English isn't his first language.
Valedictorian at his prep school in Baltimore, who then was somehow radicalized, had all these anti-capitalist ideas, went of course to the woke, and I mean woke in capital W-O-K-E. They had to actually fire the president of that woke University of Pennsylvania, because of all of the troubles that we had had on campus after campus after campus, including UPenn, with people being very anti-Semitic. So this wokeism that's being bred on these university campuses, that's being spouted throughout the rest of the liberal media. I mean, you know the drill. You know what they said about Trump. It's amazing that you don't see more crazies out there incentivized by the crazy talk that we've heard from the media. In this kid's case, apparently there may have been some pharmaceuticals involved because he had had some back pain, some issue with his spine, and was on some kind of drug that some people say really changed his personality, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not necessarily going to... And by the way, sorry, I actually read your comments yesterday, and you're like, Trish, why do you keep calling him kid? Why do you keep calling him kid? He's not a kid. He's a man. He's 26 years old. And you're right. It's just that I guess he looks young to me because I'm that much older. Right? But he's not a kid. He's a full-grown man, and we won't make any excuses for him. Here's Luigi with his friends from UPenn, and of course, he liked to take a lot of shirtless photos while, I guess, hiking in Hawaii. So he was corrupted in a really horrible way. And I do think that the university system played a role in this, and I also think the media to a certain extent also plays a role. Now I sound like them. I don't mean to, right? Because they were all like after the conservative media saying that somehow we were going to ignite all the crazies. That's not really the case, and ultimately you know how much I believe in freedom of speech, but I do think there's a lack of responsibility amongst these so-called legacy media organizations, of which that woman that you just saw that felt joy when this guy was killed, she was part of. At the Washington Post, think of that. I mean, how are they vetting the people that come in to work for them? And they're all so damn biased, as Donald Trump so articulately pointed out in his first big sit-down interview with NBC News anchor Kristen Welker.
All evidence.
Let me ask you this about January 6th.
I wish you could be if you know, you have such potential. If you could be just non-biased, you hurt yourself so badly. I'm telling you, they deleted and destroyed all the evidence. Everyone knows it. And you slough it off like it doesn't mean anything.
No, I'm just saying they deny it. That's all I'm saying.
Kristen, if I did it, you would be standing up in that chair shouting at me. And you know what I'd do? I'd say, you got me. They have done something so illegal. They have a committee sworn to, and because it was so bad, the only reason they did it is because the testimony turned out to be in favor of me.
He's talking about some of the J6 stuff. Listen, the media is biased. It's got extreme bias, and we've seen it over and over and over again.